Hi, welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name is Adam Hanlon. I'm the editor of Wetpixel. I'm joined by our regular correspondent, Alexo. Hello, Alexo. Alexi. Anyway, hi, Alex.
Hey, good to see you, Adam.
How are you doing this morning?
Yeah, all good, thanks.
Very good. So one of the most common questions, or a very common question that gets asked in the Wetpixel forums and elsewhere, is related to workflow and how basically we get our images from their memory card through onto finished, and what we do, what steps along the way. So I thought I'd ask Alex straight away to tell us what his workflow is when he's capturing images.
Well, I guess mine has evolved down a number of years as to what's most efficient and convenient and suits me. And I think I'd like to follow this up by maybe calling you tomorrow and doing an episode asking you how you do yours, because I do think everyone's a little bit different, and it's very valuable as a photographer to listen to different people.
Yep.
Because my priorities when processing pictures are different from other people's.
Of course. Yep.
But yeah, I do think that, I do have put thought into mine, and so I do think it's worth talking through.
Yep, sure.
So I download my pictures regularly on trips.
Yep.
Typically, my trips are teaching trips, so I don't have a lot of time for my own images on them, but I like to stay on top of my camera, and I'm very efficient on dive boats at coming out of a dive, getting out of my wetsuit, getting dry, getting my camera dry, getting my card out my camera, and getting it downloaded before I do anything else. And I'll often be, first to dinner on the liverboard, and my pictures will be downloading while I'm eating dinner, and I'm back from dinner, and other people are like, oh my God, I've not eaten yet and done anything. And I'm like, downloaded, eaten.
So in a wetsuit. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm out, I'm really quick at doing all that. I just stay in the zone, get focused. I guess it's also, I'm not on holiday, everyone else is.
Yep.
So I'm kind of good at, I know that little bit of time is my chance. So I download my pictures regularly.
Yep.
I back up my pictures. I download to my computer hard drive, and I back up to an external hard drive.
Yep.
When I download, I add keywords for the destination that I'm in.
So, sorry, Alex, first, what tool do you use to download? How do you get your
Lightroom.
Right.
So, I'm very simple. In terms of software, Lightroom, Photoshop, Bridge
Okay.
Are the softwares that I use. But I download into Lightroom.
Yep.
And when I download, I'll add keywords for the where I am. So it will be all the location destination primarily. And I'll put my name in as well as a keyword.
Yep.
And I'll, at that point, also import my copyright notices.
Yep.
Things like that. So that's all embedded in the file from the moment it's put on. And I rename all my files using a part text, part number based.
From what I've seen, it's a combination of hieroglyphics and mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, no, it's very, you'll have a 2 or 3 letter location code first, which means if you sort my pictures in a folder alphabetically, they'll group in destination. I'll follow that with a year code, which then means if they sort them alphabetically, they group by destination and year, because there's a lot of places I go to year after year.
Yep.
Then I have my initials in them just to make my pictures different from anyone else's.
Yep.
And then I have a sequence number.
Yep.
And that's how I do it. So in each year, in each destination, I start from number 1 again, and that's how I do my file numbering. And I find that works really well. I don't put my date in the pictures because in the end that's in the EXIF anyway.
Yep,
So I'm in the file name. And then when I import, I do add all that keyword data. So there's probably 10 keywords go in based around destination, because you're going to have, country, region, local city, then you're going to have ocean, sea, bay or reef or whatever. I don't tend to I used to add dive site names, but they're actually a real disaster for keywording, because you dive shark reef and then you later come and search your folders for everything called shark, and all the shark reef pictures come up. So I don't tag dive site names into my pictures.
Can I ask a question as well, Alex? So do you generate a new Lightroom catalog for each trip, or do you just have one Lightroom catalog that you keep adding to? How do you work that around?
So I have one Lightroom catalog that I keep adding to, and I have every picture in my Lightroom catalog that I've shot and kept on my laptop Lightroom catalog since 2006-07 when I started using Lightroom.
Right.
And although that does take up quite a bit of my computer's memory, I don't have the files on there anymore.
No.
They're apart from the most recent trip or two, they're all long gone. And it doesn't fill up my computer hard drive. And actually, Lightroom has been updated frequently enough to be able to cope with that. But the reason that's valuable to me is if I'm in a destination and I want to see what I shot there before, I've actually got copies of everything I deem worth keeping from that trip.
Yeah.
And that's very valuable both for me and also as a teaching thing.
Yeah.
You know, we're going back to a dive site. Oh, what did you shoot there last time, Alex? Well, it was 10 years ago,
yeah.
but here's the dive.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a really, so that aspect of it is really valuable.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a bit specific to me.
Yeah.
You know, it's got value to me because of teaching more than anything,
Sure,
I think.
sure. Yeah.
Then what I'll do with my pictures is during the trip, I'll try and trim them down, but I will make an effort within about a month of doing the trip to cut those pictures down, probably from everything I've shot, down to about 10 to 15%.
Right.
I edit my pictures really heavily because in a normal year, I'm shooting so much that if I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pictures all over my hard drives, I've never got time to look at them.
Yep.
And it's actually more valuable to delete everything really hard,
Yep.
because at least then I can find good pictures. And yes, I've deleted many pictures that are very publishable. I've deleted pictures that many people might prefer to the compositions that I've chosen to prefer.
Yep.
But as a photographer, it's all about your vision and your vision.
Yeah.
And I've always got new pictures coming in, so I don't feel that precious about them.
And that review process, again, I'm sorry, do you do that within Lightroom?
Yeah, within Lightroom, yeah. So just delete, you know, XXX, and move on.
Yeah.
When I've then got it to that manageable 15% of what I've shot, I'll then go through and identify all the dominant species in the pictures. Okay. So if it's like a great white shark trip, that's really easy. If it's the worst are Asian reef diving trips, where it's like wide angle scene with like 30 species in it, and then which ones do you bother to tag? Because, you know, there's a very obvious butterfly fish in the background. So do you tag, you know, thread fin butterfly fish because it's where, you know, and that's really annoying. It's good because it really teaches you ID. I use the marine life keyword list for that Eric Chang and Marty Schneiderman put together, maybe with someone, I don't remember who else was involved, but it's a really, really valuable list. They sold it for like $100 or something. Yeah. And the amount of typing and time that has saved me over the last 10 years, I would have paid them many times more for it.
Yeah.
There are some bugs in it. There are some misspellings and things like that.
Yeah.
Quite a few nudibranchs have changed their names since that list.
Yeah.
It doesn't cover places like the Red Sea or Europe very well, but it is very, very valuable. Yeah. And I've been able to add the missing Latin names of things that I commonly see. Yeah. But I don't need to remember the Latin names of subjects. All I need to do to use that keyword list is remember the start of the name. So for example, I've been shooting a lot in the UK at the moment. So, you know, I might start typing, you know, the name of the kelp or the name of soft corals like Dead Man's Fingers. I just have to type DEAD and it starts coming up as a prompt. And I just select it, hit return. And you can obviously select, you know, particularly in the UK where you've got low biodiversity, you can select, you know, 40 pictures in a row and add the Latin name to all of those. And then that goes in at the Lightroom stage, which means any additional output from that point on will always have those species in the keyword list.
Yeah.
I then will, you know, so when I've done that, and that is very time consuming, and it's something that stops me sharing pictures quickly after shooting them.
Yeah.
But the reason I do that is I think it's really valuable for me long term to have those. And by taking that extra step, it means that I make sure I do that step. So I don't allow myself to share a picture online until I've done that. And because I want to share this new picture, it motivates me to go through and add the species names. And that's valuable to me because of the way I sell my pictures. Yeah. Now, the majority of underwater photographers probably don't even need to know what their subjects are. But for me, a lot of my pictures sell without me being there. They need to be correctly identified. Obviously, if I don't know what stuff is, I'll be going to ID books.
The traditional stock modelling evolved really around keywords, didn't it? So people would search for keyword, and that certainly stock agencies in the past were very particular about what keywords you added, and things like Latin species names, taxonomy, that kind of thing was very important.
I think I don't put the full taxonomy in because it can be, first of all, it's very clunky, and no one, you know, goes in and searches for you know, peripheral or whatever, you know, or Nidaria or whatever it is, you know, people go in and search in other ways. I will add some additional keywords. Maybe if something's very brightly colored in obvious color, I might add that to the keyword. But actually, I think these days description is more important than keywording. And I'll come into that in a minute. So when I've got my favorite pictures, I'll then select my favorite, say 100 to 300 from a trip. So that's sort of top 10%, 20% I was talking about before. That maybe end up being on a long trip, 1,000 images, something like that. From that, I'll select my top 100 to 300, again, depending on the trip. And I'll process all of those in Lightroom and make sure they're all looking really good.
Do you use star ratings, or how do you just...
Yeah, I'll use a star rating to pick them out.
Yep.
But then I ultimately will make a separate collection and actually a new Lightroom catalog and export as a catalog those pictures.
Right.
And then I copy them from my laptop to my desktop computer.
Okay.
And my desktop Lightroom is just all my favorites. So it's a much tighter catalog. So I have two Lightroom catalogs. I have one on my laptop, which is
everything, all
my pictures that I've kept from the field, and one on my desktop computer, which is all my favorites. Which in reality, you're never going to have time to process 300 pictures from a shot, from a trip, let alone 100, or let alone more. So those are really the only pictures I ever really refer back to. If I have a really specific need for a picture, I might go and dig back through those original 1,000. But that's why, for me, I'm very happy editing hard, because I know I've never got time to process these pictures. And ultimately, I want to put out there my very best work that makes people think I'm a good photographer rather than an average photographer.
Of course.
So those reasons, I find it very easy to delete. Even though I'm like, oh, yeah, that's really good. I know a magazine might use that on the cover, but actually, I've got a better shot, so I'm not going to ever show anyone that second best shot, for example. Then on my main computer, they're in Lightroom there. I'll make the final tweaks in Lightroom, and then I'll export them as a PSD file into a folder on my computer, which is called Working Folder. And that's where all my processed PSD files are. I'll export them, as a high res PSD file out of Lightroom with all the Lightroom adjustments made. I'll then open the picture in Photoshop and use Photoshop for spot removal for any small scale work that I feel needs a bit more work to, and also for any sharpening. I prefer using Photoshop for sharpening. I do apply a small sharpen out of Lightroom, but I'm generally using Photoshop for selective work, maybe for some fine tuning of global changes, but not big ones, some contrast work and sharpening and spot removal.
So the inevitable question that will come up at this point is people will request a tutorial on how you carry out your sharpening, for example. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to preempt that question by suggesting that there's a really, really good resource for all things to do with specific editing. Erin Quigley has, over the pandemic outbreak particularly, has produced a series of tutorials. You can watch them live. There's a small fee if you want to watch them subsequently after live events. And she covers pretty much all the stuff we're talking in a great deal of depth. And I have to say, knows more about it certainly than I do. I can't speak for Alex. So she's a really, really good resource. So if you want to know more about sharpening your images in Photoshop like Alex does, go ask Erin, and that's the place to go. Go ask Erin.com, and she'll certainly sort out the sort of the nuts and bolts of how to go about doing it. Sorry, Alex.
Absolutely. But I'm a big believer in using both Lightroom and Photoshop. And I don't use Photoshop for compositing this, that, and the. I mean, I might occasionally, but Photoshop is a better fine scale tool for adjusting images than Lightroom. Lightroom is good for getting everything looking great. Photoshop is good for polishing it up and getting it finished. Then out of Photoshop, I then have an automated save. So when I finish processing, just click the automated save, and it saves me a high res TIFF file into my archives, which is my archived picture. That will sit in a processed folder for a little bit, and when I've done a batch of say 40 or 50 of them, I'll then go in and write the image captions for them. And the caption and description are really important. I think more important now for search than keywords. So I'll then write here is a yellow butterfly fish, open brackets. And then if it's a masked butterfly fish from the Red Sea, it'd be masked butterfly fish, key to Don, Semi, whatever his name is, close brackets, swimming over a coral reef in Ras Mohammed National Park, Sinai, Red Sea. So I'll write that out as a description. And that description is also searchable. So if at that point, say it's a split level shot, I'll write split level in the description. If it's a long exposure shot, I might write long exposure. If it's a snooted shot, I might write that. And that just helps anyone who's discovering the picture understanding why the picture maybe doesn't look completely normal, because I've used a technique. So, I might, so I'll mention colors, I'll mention things about them and write that in them. And then when that's done, that then is my final saved archive picture. But actually, very few people ever get to see that picture. But it's only when I've made that picture that I'll then share the picture in social media. And that restraint is just to make sure that I only process pictures once and I process them properly. I think the mistake I used to make is I'd come back from a trip, I'd do some quick and dirty processing on pictures so I could share loads of pictures with my mates and get really excited about them. And then someone would go from a magazine, oh, we love this picture, can we have it? And then I'd have to sit down and process the bloody thing. And I'd much rather actually process things properly and only share things when they're properly processed. Because then if someone asks for it, it's like, bang, you've got it 5 minutes later when you're excited about it, not 3 days later when I've got time to process it.
So how do you then browse your final images?
Okay, so because they've been keyworded and captioned by that point, they're completely searchable on many levels. They're completely searchable if you just use the search function on the Mac globally. Or you can go within any of the software and view them. A lot of people put their process files back into Lightroom. I don't use Lightroom for that because I like my Lightroom catalogs to be raw file catalogs. And I use Bridge for that. And I keep my process files. So that process TIFF file gets made into a full resolution JPEG file, which is generally the file that I send to magazines. And that's in Adobe RGB, which is, I think, a better color space for sending off.
Broader color space,
And then I will also make a web-ready version, which goes on my website, which has my name across the bottom as a copyright. And that goes on my website, and that's a 1500 pixel version of the picture. And then my website makes 2 other copies of that, one of which is like a 750 and one is a thumbnail to display on my website. And because they've got the captions in them, because they've got the keywords in them, the software that I use to host them on my website can read all that. So that's why the website feature we often talk about at the end of these episodes is completely searchable. Because I've made those versions from the TIFF file that's got all this stuff in it. So you can search the EXIF data, you can search the caption, you can search the keywords. You know, on my website, the keywords come up as things. If you click on the thing that says, clownfish, all the clownfish pictures come up. You know, so it really suits that thing well.
And I think this is something. I mean, as photographers, we're notoriously bad. I think most are in that sitting down post a trip and entering keywords is the last thing you feel like doing, and then entering captions. But that's actually the secret to your images being found, and also you being able to find them when you need them. So it's worth the time and effort. Although I find it hard to persuade myself of that frequently, but it is. Yeah.
And I think the way I persuaded myself to do it was to sort of set that rule. I don't share my images until they're processed properly. And that forces me through that process. And I don't process a picture until I've identified the species in it. And those 2 steps are laborious, but it does mean that I have pictures that are fully searchable, that are ready to be delivered to anyone. Obviously, a lot of dive magazines don't really care what's in the picture, and you can write the caption later. But outside of that sphere, it's really useful to know what the pictures are. And I think so. That's the way I run things. And then I keep those processed JPEGs in a searchable folder. I have a copy on my computer on a hard drive, and I have a copy on Dropbox. And that also helps me with my backups, because actually for me, the pictures I least want to lose are those 8,000 or so processed pictures, because they're ready to sell. And actually, if I lost a hard drive of raw files, yes, I would be annoyed. But I'd be less annoyed than the processed pictures, because generally after every trip, I'll find the best pictures and I'll process them straight away. And then maybe over time I'll go back and go, oh, that could be useful, or that would be good for a competition, and maybe find those shots later. But I'll process the ones that I think will be the best earners first. There's loads in that. Sorry, Adam.
Yeah, no, it's all right. It's good, very good chat. Thank you, Alex. There's lots of food for thought there, and hopefully, if nothing else, it'll hopefully encourage people that are watching this episode that you really need to deploy a system. So many people do it on a very ad hoc basis and end up in a mess. Several thousand images down the line. You know, the more you can streamline the system and the earlier you can do it, the easier it is to implement. And hopefully, well, thanks to Alex for giving us lots of good ideas. You can view Alex's keyworded and captioned images at amustard.com, where they're great and they're great to look at. I'd like to thank CCAM for sponsoring this episode very much, and I'd like to thank you all for watching. If it's been helpful, please give it a like. If you'd like to add suggestions or possibly tell us about how you do your workflow, please feel free to add to the comment section below. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.